everybody. Bonjour. My name is Barić, and I'm the director of the FOFA gallery. I should not stand in front of the... Is that okay? Feedback, guys? Okay, everyone can hear me all right. I wanted to welcome everyone to this artist talk with Nancy Barić and Yazzie, whose two video works are currently on display here in the gallery. La discussion va avoir lieu en anglais, mais si jamais vous avez des questions à la fin en français, n'hésitez pas, vous pouvez les poser en français, on peut faire des traductions au besoin. So I'll begin by acknowledging that the FOFA gallery is located on unceded Indigenous lands. We recognize the 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵𝘢𝘯𝘦𝘴𝘴 as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather today. 𝘛𝘩𝘦 is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations, and today it's home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future, and our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. For the FOFA gallery, as we consider the lands and waters that surround and support us, this has meant ongoing work in thinking about how we might take better care of the land and do more of our work in sustainable ways. That's part of how we're thinking about what it means to be here and be on this land. I recently attended a workshop with Donna Goodleaf, who's the director of Decolonizing Curriculum and Pedagogy at 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵𝘢𝘯𝘴 workshop on land acknowledgements, as we're sort of thinking about how we might do the land acknowledgement differently here too. And she said something that really just kind of rocked my world a bit and reframed the way I was thinking about relationships to land. And she said that humans are the weakest as we're dependent on all the other things in thinking about how we rely on land and rely on resources. And for her, this was sort of connected to why we should be humble and be thankful. And for me, that it was a thing I thought before, but she put it in a way that really stuck with me. And so this consideration of how humans relate to and rely upon the land is central to both of the works by Nancy and Stephen, which offer two distinct but strikingly similar perspectives on their different places of origin and places that have inspired them. So be that water, mountains, or what we think about as natural resources, but also really questioning that notion of a resource that can be used or exploited or extracted. So before I get into the introductions, I'd like to first extend a special thanks to the team at the Indigenous Futures Research Center who are co-presenting this. And also helping us to cope with Stephen, who's traveled here from Denver, I think first time in Montreal, so especially wanted to thank Hans and Hannah, Milo, and Joelle. I also want to thank my amazing FOFA gallery team, so Geneviève, Maria, Karina, Jody, Josh, Lawrence, Philip, Joey, Paras, Juan Pablo, Jasmine. There's like a bunch of us that make it go here, and also the fine folks at the CDA who helped us set up the whole video mic situation. And especially Chris Reddy, who was here troubleshooting till like the very end. And finally, thanks to the Canada Council for the Arts, we have funding from them to do this kind of programming, so we're really appreciative of that support too. So without further ado, I'm first going to introduce Michelle McGuff, who will introduce Stephen, and then I'll come back, introduce Nancy, and then we'll let the artist kind of take it away. It's a little bit of a... So Michelle McGuff, Dr. Michelle McGuff, who is Cree Métis other background, completed her PhD in Indigenous art history at the University of New Mexico. Prior to returning to school for her advanced degree, she taught museum studies at the Institute of American Indian Art and was the assistant curator at the 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵 Museum of the Native American Indian in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Dr. McGuff has a master's degree from Carleton University, as well as a BFA from Emily Carr. I think when I first heard of this, I was like, just done all the things, and an undergraduate degree from the Institute of American Indian Art. And she also has a BA degree from the University of Alberta. Dr. McGuff currently teaches at 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵 University here in the art history department.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Hello, my name is Michelle McGowan. I come from a place known as Beaver Hills Palace, located in the Treaty 6 region of what is currently known as Alberta. When I found out that Steve was coming, I first met Steve, we were just saying, it must be 14 years ago, and it was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I thought, oh, when Nicole approached me, I said, yes, I can, please, let me introduce him. And I have written some things, and I'm going to go with those, and then kind of add a little bit. So, Stephen Yazzie is a renowned contemporary artist known for his captivating, thought-provoking works that often explore the themes of identity, culture, and the environment. With a diverse practice that encompasses painting, sculpture, installation, and video art, Yazzie's creations offer a unique and multifaceted perspective on the world around us. Born and raised in Arizona, Yazzie's 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘶𝘕𝘦 and 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵𝘢𝘯𝘬𝑡 heritage deeply influences his artistic expression. Infusing his pieces with rich cultural significance, his art often delves into the complexity of his own identity and the interconnectedness of humanity with the natural world, inviting viewers to contemplate their own place within the broader tapestry of existence. As I mentioned, I first met Steve when you were part of Post-Commodity and the exhibition there in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I remember being so struck with those works, but then also looking into your own practice as an artist, solo practice as an artist, and being stricken again about the depth of your work, and also how you are so willing to kind of go out on the ledge, and you're always willing to kind of practice or do something different to kind of shake it up. And I've always had an admiration for that. We kind of get really stayed in our practice, and not challenge ourselves and do the expected kind of thing. But Steve, you've always kind of moved beyond that, and so I've always appreciated that in your work as an example of how, as professionals, as artists, that we can always kind of push ourselves to the limit. And so with that, welcome Steve to this place today.
I forgot her name.
I know, right?
I'm sorry, I mispronounced your last name. I had it written down. I'll get it right next time. So it's my great pleasure to also introduce to you.
And my last name is Barić.
Okay,
Yes.
Nancy Barić.
Yeah, it means little water. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Is a filmmaker and visual artist living and working in 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘶𝘕𝘦𝘢𝘯𝘴, Montreal. She's a graduate of 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘶𝑚's film production program, and I also just recently learned art history, multifaceted person too. And her films are featured in the collections of the 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘶𝘕𝘦𝘢𝘯𝘬𝘓 School of Cinema and the 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘶𝑚 in Montreal. Her last fiction film, Veronica, was shortlisted for Toronto's International Film Festival's as Canadian Shorts Top 10. And her films have been featured in magazines such as 24 Images, Let's Panic, and Terra Firma. Nancy's been making films for 20 years now, primarily experimental and documentary films. She is a first-generation Canadian of Dalmatian and Montenegrin descent, and as you'll see in her beautiful film, if you stick around and watch after, her ancestry is from the sea, and she's talking about water. And these connections to nature and storytelling are very much at the center of her work. I also had the chance to watch some of her other short films and sort of learning about her practice, and there's just such a sensitivity to place and to people and to stories that I'm sort of feeling in the work, and to sort of her own culture and position within that. So this is sort of a through line I'm seeing in your work that I think also connects back to what Stephen's doing too. So I'm going to hand things off to you all, and it's a loosely structured thing. These are both chatty people with lots to say, so I was like, oh, they're going to be fine. But we're hoping you'll talk a little bit about the works on here, your collaboration, how you decided to present these together, and anything else that really strikes your fancy. So.
Okay. Thank you, Nicole, for selecting our work, because it was an open call. It was an open call, and FOFA Gallery for selecting the work. And then also, I have to, just before anything, just say that It is with the greatest privilege and humility that 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵𝘢𝘯𝘬𝘕, who's a 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘕 scholar, decided to be in the film and really emphasize the indigeneity and center Indigenous knowledge around Niagara Falls. And then also, like I had mentioned earlier, if there's one takeaway from the film, and then it doesn't matter where you watch, but at least come back to know that 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵 says that Niagara Falls was a sacred place. And once you know it's a sacred place, I really hope you look at it differently and then establish a more generous connection versus then to just go to everything around it. Just that. But thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Michelle and Nicole. Thank you for, and of course, it's great to have some support from the Indigenous Futures Research Center for this project, and so which is appreciated there. Stephen John Yazzie Bidishye, Belagara Nishni, Taji Basishti, Belagara Dashiche, Sinijini Dashinawi. Hello, my name is Stephen Yazzie. I am the white man clan, born from the Turkey clan. Those are the two maternal clans, one from my mother's side and the other from my father's. And my maternal clans, which are also maternal to my parents, and my grandparents and my grandmothers, are both white man clan and Sinijini clan, which is the Blackstreet Wood people on my grandfather's side. So I wanted to introduce myself as a Navajo to honor where I come from and my ancestry, and also to acknowledge that I'm a guest here in these lands and I'm visiting with my family. And we're here, and out of respect, I want to present myself in that way. This collaboration that Nancy and I began, this is culminated from a series of conversations and interactions online. Today was the first time we've actually met in person. We've known each other for a few years now, and we've collaborated and had long conversations about work that's related to social justice or work around land and water, Indigenous communities, and I was drawn to a lot of the work that she was supporting online and posting and reposting and celebrating and having, and also sharing her history. So I was really drawn to the, just the kind of human being she is as a creative person and also as a filmmaker. I come into our practice as a multidisciplinary artist, so I came from painting and over time merged or kind of started playing into more conceptual work and practice, and then also, and that's how video and film happened for me. Was initially a way to document my own work, and that's moved into installation work and also now like single channel work and film work. So we collaborated initially on small pieces that were online, and I also invited her to be a voice for a project I have back in Denver for another project. But to get to this piece here, I'll just say that initially we shared work with each other, and these two films really felt like they resonated and connected, and we're having a conversation. And we thought it would be really, if we had the chance, it would be really important to bring these together. So while you're hearing us talk about the work, I hope that you can spend some time at some point to kind of take in the pieces together. They are works that we've created kind of independent of each other, but bringing them together, I think it's important because it continues the conversation, not of us against them, right, but us together. And there's so many ideas I think that our work is addressing and hopes to address that we share together.
Oh, definitely. And because we became friends via Instagram, and I know it sounds silly, but the thing is, what Steve said is probably a lot more common than I would think, or maybe the world would think. But I remember because, like you mentioned, my first degree is in art history studio art, major in painting and drawing. So Steve is an amazing painter. And he had this one painting with a coyote sitting on a couch, right? Like, and I just thought like, oh, okay, an animal that would normally be outside, it's like comfortable inside, and like, what exactly is going on here, et cetera, et cetera. So then, but Steve and I also have a lot of common friends that we like know in real life and everything. And then it was just, I think it just really happened organically, which is kind of nice. Like, it's just nice to talk with artists, and it's nice to like find little islands elsewhere like that you can relate and connect with someone. And like we were talking, and we asked like, when did we actually remember even, what was the first time that we decided to show each other these, like my film and his film? And then we don't remember the exact date, but it was like amazing when we actually got to show each other the work, like how much they actually relate. Mine was created in 2021, this was created in 2017. But I think primarily, and I don't know, maybe it's just like yes, all of that with nature, that like we connect, that there's like, that we care, that there should be a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. But I also, like, we have a lot of other things that are in common as well. Like we both fish, do you know? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know, like it sounds silly, but okay, yeah, and his son enjoys fishing as well. So, you know, like I think there's a bit of that as well. But I think like, if there is a connection, it's kind of like, oh, okay, so this is a new friend. And then you can have like more of a comfortable conversation. The majority of conversations we have are usually about art. So, like, and little things around that, but, yes, but, go ahead.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your piece? Like, as a
You go ahead, you can start, yeah, you start and then I'll.
Okay. So the piece, my piece is called Mountain Song, and it's part of it's some of the shots and the moments in the film are also part of another piece called Black, White, Blue, Yellow, which is a 4-channel installation, video installation that explores the 4 outlying sacred mountains for Navajos and Native people. And this area is in the northern Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and southern Colorado region in the United States. But Mountain Song specifically is about the 𝘰𝘦𝘢𝘕𝘦𝘢𝘯𝘴, which means big sheep in Navajo, and it's referring to the northern mountain, and it's also the mountain that's associated with the color black. And there's also stories about how that the black is the color of night, and black is also a certain time of age in our life where things are in decline. So I felt like this piece as a standalone, using the 𝘰𝘦𝘢𝘕𝘦𝘢𝘯𝘴, or Hesperus as it's known in Colorado, would be a good starting point, and really beginning. So as you see the piece, you're beginning at a sacred mountain location, and slowly this journey, both personally and then through this broken up abstract ideas of Navajo mythology. And with one of the speakers, you're following this sacred space that ends up essentially at my backyard in Phoenix at the time. And there's a small mountain that goes in the back of our backyard that this story sort of ends. But there's all these things that happen in between that, with the kind of the voice of the voice of Robert Yazzie, who's a lawmaker, a judge on the Navajo reservation, and he was at the time this conversation happened, he was discussing the paradigm, the Navajo paradigm, a way of thinking, kind of like a Navajo knowledge, or a knowledge of there's all these things that go into how Indigenous people, or Navajo specifically, think about like life ways or these philosophies of life, and how he needed to integrate those into policy, and how the complications of merging Indigenous law and thinking into Western law, and things that are both needed to be like responsible for the tribal community, but as well as the acknowledging the federal system that our reservations are bound to. So some of that conversation touches on uranium And uranium was a point of focus in this place because this region of the Navajo reservation that you'll see in the film, it covers areas that are that have been touched by post-colonial kind of activities of uranium mining, and in particular, or focusing on the reservation itself, there are over 500 decommissioned or abandoned sites on the reservation, on the Navajo reservation. And so those, in this particular piece, that uranium is also is a metaphor of this mythological beast that can't be, once it's released, into this realm, it can't be changed. So I think there's with the stories and that are shared in the piece by both Robert Yazzie and Freddie Johnson, another Navajo elder, they kind of carry this question of our imbalance, with the land, and so I think this also ties, into your piece. So that's a kind of a loose framework or way to think about this piece, and then how it touches on or connects to Nancy's. So the pieces are arranged so it's cyclical, right? So you can step into these films at any point, and I think if you stay here, you stay long enough, you'll see the entire. You can see the cycle or experience the cycle, and these and they connect. So, but I'll let you.
Okay. Yeah, I know. Sorry, Steve. I know. I was really interested to listen to you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I decided to make a film about connection to water. Okay, and then I decided Niagara Falls because it's the place that the majority of the population around, not the majority of the population around the world, but it's a place that's known to a lot of people around the world, right? And then I was questioning, okay, so how do I connect myself to Niagara Falls? And I thought about my grandmother, and I thought about exactly the story that she would have about the connection to water. You put your hand in water, you're connected to it. And then I thought, how do I connect her then to here? Because I'm the first generation born here. And then I thought, Nikola Tesla, right? So the first hydroelectric plant is at Niagara Falls. It's a flow-in hydroelectric plant in which there's no alteration at all to the water. It's just as is. It's not like, let's say, some of the hydroelectric projects that we have in which you have to create a reservoir and whatnot, which is horrific for the environment. That's another story. And then I asked myself the question, because I'm originally from Ontario. I grew up by Six Nations, and I've been to Niagara Falls 1,000,001 times. And then it was okay, never asked myself, even though I went to school with kids from Six Nations, whose land is it? And then actually the Indigenous advisor on the film, who teaches here at 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘴, he found this article where Rick Hill, the 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵 scholar, actually speaks about Niagara Falls. Okay, so there was now find Rick Hill. I found him, but it took some time actually to get to him. And it's an interesting process in which why it took the time it took to get to him, which would then be the first thing to experience in my life in which I genuinely had to build a relationship with him because he's Indigenous. It wasn't a given. Whereas with anyone else, I could just call up and say okay, this is my project, are you interested or not? And then we spoke on the phone for an hour. And he said to me, okay, I'm not sure about this because I've had bad experience with white people. I'm white. And fair enough. And he said, I have to think about it. And he said, I'm giving a talk in Toronto. If you can come to Toronto, I'll think about it, okay? So I prepared myself, went to Toronto, listened to his talk at the University of Toronto, et cetera, waited for the right moment to approach him, and I already had in advance a release form, there was some sort of contract we agreed, and the minute he saw me, he said, where do I sign? So then I realized, yes, not that it was a test, that he was testing me, but it is like, this is how we start to build a relationship. And so then, long story short, the first day of shoot is actually interviewing Rick Hill, okay? And whilst this was going on, the interview was actually shot, we recorded him at Six Nation. There was all these demonstrations, I think it had gone on for a year, in which it was a question of broken treaties, because it was a land agreement, and there was illegal housing that was built on 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘚𝘕 land. Okay, so all of that is going on while we're doing the recording, okay? Which is, in the end, like, by the time I was halfway through the film, that would be somewhat resolved. But all of this to say, listen to Rick Hill. And everyone who worked on the film is Indigenous. And then I realized, I don't have a connection to all water. Like, I genuinely don't. I have a connection because if I've developed childhood memories, but let's say, you know, and I say in the film as well, I don't have the same connection to the water here in Montreal. And then I realized, of all the bodies of water that I talk about, it's the only one that was actually altered. It was to create the St. Lawrence Seaway. It was an agreement between the United States and Canada. It was completed in 1959, and then there you go. And then I realized exactly, these were all of the things that Rick Hill was talking about, like to have a connection, to sever a connection, and whatnot. But then I just think, like, exactly, if we return to you with, like, the land, it's like, if you don't have a connection with land and water, you can easily exploit it, which is, like, primarily the case with all settlers, with colonialism everywhere in the world. So, you know, it's not just isolated to here. So, exactly, and I think, like, that's where films start to also, not only in a visual aspect, but then also like in terms of themes and discussion and perhaps like consciously or unconsciously what you and I were exploring. You want to say something?
I don't know, I was just thinking about the conscious and unconscious decisions that we both made.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit today, but like your choice in like letting this moment breathe with the shot, and how you allowed things to go into abstraction. What were your choices? What were your thoughts around that?
Because it was really just looking at water. It was really just, and I thought about that too, because it's kind of interesting, Steve, even though we have like the wide frame, right? I was always just to look at the water. You're above, like you're going above, or it's like en face. Like, and I just thought, it is, we're both looking and thinking. Do you know, like it's, like, not that we connected with the camera, we were one with the camera, not like that, but it is like that, you know what I mean, it's a bit tacky, but yeah, it's sort of like, okay, it's like, let the land and the water speak for itself, and like, what, and then also for us to understand what relationship we actually have with it. And like, here's Rick talking about exactly with the commercialization, Rick Hill, talking about the commercialization of like Niagara Falls. What's insane was after like the interview, we drove to Niagara Falls, okay? And part of my language, I shot the worst shit I ever shot in my life. Like as if I had never operated a camera, because it was just like to realize, oh my God, like I've lived, you know, I'm born here, lived my entire life and never questioned this. Went to a place that I've been to 1,000,001 times, didn't even know whose land it was, you know, like exactly, it's like, confronting lies, like it was too much. At the moment we arrived, and I have the photo on my phone, I'll show you, there was a snake, a toy snake on the grass, okay? And I texted Rick and I said, there's a toy snake here, and he answered back and he said, thunder beings operate in mysterious ways, right? And I was just like, yeah, okay, but anyway, all of that to say, like, I think it's good, I think what's important, and for everyone, is that we start to question these things. Like we just start to question our connection to land. Like start to question our connection to water. Like with everything that's going on in the world right now. It really all comes down to colonialism and land grabbing. And that people mean nothing. They're just hindering this advancement towards that. So, like, sorry, you want to say something?
Oh, no, I'm listening.
Okay, no, sorry, but yeah, okay, I know, but we also, you and I discussed earlier as well, I had asked you, why did you decide to include the moon landing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
There's a different moments in my film. There's an audio outtake of it's 69, the landing of the moon, and so that radio conversation. And I think there was two main reasons why I used that. And you see and hear it together. One is kind of maybe the obvious. It's just this is such a kind of an activity of taking over space, right, or claiming or traveling to something. So there's that idea, but then there's also this idea that, you know, there's only a few people that landed on the moon, and the rest of us, you know, on Earth never can only imagine what it's like, right? So there's a separation. And so as like a non-native person viewing the land and listening to this, you can only imagine the other experience, the indigenous experience, right? Unless you actually live there, you've been a part of that. And so I felt like that was important to create some kind of something that felt, you know, disjointed or something that you can't really connect with. I felt like maybe it's more of an abstract way that worked for me with that audio. Yeah.
No, but it's a beautiful film, Steve. Like, I'm really touched by it. And
yeah, and I hope you all get a chance to stick around and see it. Whether we have, whether the place tonight or.
Yeah, it's tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I know. But
I know. I'm amazed by this shot because you said this.
Yeah, this is an iPhone. This is shot with an iPhone. Yeah, I know, but it's optics, eh? It's just the lens. You can have any, it doesn't matter what the body is. It's just like the lens if it's good. But yeah, it was iPhone 11. It's an advertisement for them, which we shouldn't do, but yeah. But the thing is, yeah, anyway, but. Do you want to ask any questions?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is, I think, pretty open too, so if there's anything that you would like to ask or know about,
Do you have this mic is on? We could start with any questions from the audience.
Yeah,
I've got some in my back pocket too, but
Okay, so what do you think about Niagara Falls, the sacred place, versus all the casinos that are around it? It's almost like an irony that it's there.
No, but, okay. It was exactly that. Think after, if you've ever, all of this to say, when I had actually, the Indigenous advisor on the film, when I brought him the raw material to listen to Rick Hill, he was choked up listening to Rick Hill. Really, I think just as an elder, and to be in the presence of anyone who spent their entire life thinking and looking, obviously will change the way. It's horrible. It's actually really, really ugly. And the thing is, that's what I'm saying, if there's anything that you take away from this, it's just to remember that it's a sacred site. And it's so disrespected. And he says it in such a nice way, actually. We lost the thunder beats. I'm not Indigenous, and I'm upset that the thunder beats left, you know? So, let alone someone who actually has an attachment to that. But yeah, it is kind of sad. It is. Although, I have to say one thing, okay? People of color looked more at the water. There was definitely a connection. Generally speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Just that.
Well, there's stills too. There's some, the way you let those images overlap and the still image that you pull.
Yeah.
That's really meditative. I think one of our work has this kind of meditative, droning quality. But the way you those images, people just looking at water.
Yeah.
That was really,
Yeah. But we both did that, Steve. And I think that's where they sort of even if it's a circular fashion, the two relate to each other. Because we're looking. We're genuinely looking. You know, it's not just to set up a camera and walk away. Right? It's actually to just be behind the camera. Okay. Okay, thank you. Hi. Hi.
I'm curious because you've each talked about what your film is, but you talk about doing this work together. I'm curious, how do you see it as, do you see it as one project?
Yes.
Two pieces of one project that come together, or it just happens to be like a dual screening? If you see this, what are the moments of overlap that maybe you might have specifically built into what you're presenting?
Well, I think the fact that we're showing these together with intention of them being, connected, so that may hopefully offer the visitor, the viewer, kind of an entry point. But I think that the pieces, I think both of us have made certain choices independent of, on our own projects that really feel like they're connected, that they resonate. So I think there's different reflecting points that happen, once you see the work together. But that they're presented in this way, I think it's important, because we're calling it the nearness of distance, right? We titled the two works together as one, and you can speak a little bit to that if you could. But I think it's important that just knowing that we're not just showing these as separate pieces and then we end the showing, that there's a kind of a cyclical, cycle to the work, and I think there's just some of we see the embedded, like whether they're aesthetic choices or there's some stories that connect. There's Aaron Joyce did a wonderful job writing about the two works and really touched on the mythological monsters or creatures or beings in both of our works that are shared and how those just come up in story. But I think, it was just thinking about just coming together for this it took some consideration of what works would make the most sense. So I think we did a good job. And I thank Nancy for putting this, initiating, she's kind of boots on the ground here, getting this into the open call and helping to see this through. So
Thank you. Really, honestly, we asked to see each other's work, right? And I said, this is the last thing I made. And then he sent his. And then I was just dumbfounded. I was like, this is incredible that two people who, he's in the United States, I'm here. And it's mine was made in 2021, this in 2017, that even if it is water and land, it's the same head and heart, actually. It is. And like you said, it's very circular. And it's nice that it's a loop, which is kind of good too, which is storytelling within itself. It's always circular. And even with mine, start with Niagara Falls, and we come here, it's all 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵 territory. Do you know? So we're looping back. So I think,
you talk a little bit about the nearness of the
the nearness of distance, because the nearness of distance is something that's so close yet far. You're just close enough, you're close enough, but it's just too far. It's like the fingers not quite touching. And it's sort of,
I think we also feel like there is a sense of hope with this.
Yeah, that's the hope,
That is the hope.
Even though, exactly, it's the commercialization of Niagara Falls, even though it's there's nowhere that there's, that this is 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵 territory, there's nowhere, we asked, it was kind of upsetting that way. It's still nice to know that, because we have this moment, people will now know. It's like Maya Angelou, it's when you know better, you do better. Now, it's you have to look, no, you have to look at it differently. You have to think of sacred sites or sacred places even differently. Did that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
What else?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a question or a comment. I I know, people are like, oh no, not winos. But I just wondered, because of like the title, exactly like the nearness of distance, I wonder if you see that also applying the way you're doing your camera work and the way you have used film. Can you comment on that?
That's actually good. That was actually good, Shandia. That's good to say. Like, I never thought about that. Well, I think, I don't know, because you're always just playing like with objectivity, subjectivity, right? Like the thing is, it's like how close do you come to something, how much do you, but if you connect, like if you get it, if you get into the zone, and your head and heart get into that moment. And I think that's where you're closer, definitely. There's less of a distance, you know? And like, when people understand, like, I think just art in general is nearness of distance, you know what I mean? Like, anything creative. It's just like when people get it, it's like suddenly there is a coming together, you know? So I think that's kind of nice. And exactly, it is a hopeful thing. Like, in all seriousness, we still have to take into consideration that, like, okay, according to the UN Environmental Program, or the UN Environment Program, since 2021, 300 Indigenous people have died, or rather they've been killed defending land and water, you know? So like, as much as we talk about this, like the connection, disconnection, and that there is hope, we still have to recognize that we're in a very privileged position to present this in a gallery, and that because there's the lack of like connection, people are murdered. But all of that to say is still, it returns to hope. Exactly. And not to negate anything about people being killed, but yeah, it's like telling you. Sorry, I know I didn't mean to make it go in that direction. Sorry, do you want to say something, Steve?
No, that's
okay.
good.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I also like was thinking about like even choosing the medium of film to treat the subjects that you use, and like how does that change like the way that you would like speak to the subject even by using a camera.
Oh, no,
And that like and that camera and stuff, exactly, there's like a disconnection, but it's like because there's a distance sometimes with the sitter, or you know, like I was just, it was like a brainstorm basically in my head. Like there's a lot of things, but
No,
yeah.
it is about, and I like actually, and I don't even remember where I first heard the nearness of distance, and I've always loved it. Because it's like, it has this sense of like loss, but it's not completely hopeless, you know? Like, you always have that chance that you can reach it, so, yeah.
Maybe just sort of riff, because I'd like to hear Stephen's thoughts on this question
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
film too, because you also paint and you also
Yeah.
draw
Yeah.
machines and you also, you know, you work across different media. So.
I missed the question, but
Why are you using films? Why not paint?
Yeah.
The kind of the idea dictates the medium sometimes, and this felt like it could facilitate the needs of physically being in the space, and also documenting and having there be both an experiential experience in the process of making, and then also literally having images that come from that. And so I think the idea always seems to, like, what's the best medium to reinforce or to activate this? You know, sometimes it's painting, but this definitely turning toward the camera. But then also, as it comes into this this other form of resolution, this coming together both for us, but and bringing the pieces together is another kind of act in itself in the process.
Yeah, there you go, it's performative. Do you know what I mean? And generative, yeah, definitely.
I was thinking, it's microphones. Yeah, I was just kind of following up on that. I was thinking about the challenge of trying to communicate something that's so enormous. You know, like land is an enormous space. Like looking at the falls, it's kind of interesting. Like last year, I went to Niagara Falls for the first time since I was a kid, and I was like kind of surprised at just on some level how immense it was, but then also so small in some way. And like communicate, I also dabble in art making, and sometimes I have an issue with the limitations, I guess, of like, how do you communicate a big idea through any kind of medium? So I do a lot of painting, but also some other stuff, and you know, trying to communicate, you know, the immensity of land and the complexity of land. It's like, you know, being able to I think take a video and enlarge it, and like just even in terms of the scale of this, like the image that we're looking at, I think it really does create an immersion that like painting just can't, you know? And also just the encryption of like landscape painting, and if you're trying to represent a mountain or a waterfall or whatever, it's like you really get lost in the material. The material just isn't adequate. I think like you really do maybe need to go all the way into, you know, film and really just enlarge it to the scale that it needs to be to read it, to read the subject, or to read the complexity of like the space and all that. And give it an opportunity to be meditative. I think like with a painting, you know, you can look at it and maybe meditate on it, but I don't know if people really allow themselves to get drawn in maybe the same way as film. Or I'm curious, I haven't seen the work yet. I'm curious. I don't know exactly what I'm talking about. I love it. We'll see.
No, and I think we're very fortunate that we're able to see this at scale here. And it's like you know, up until, you know, when I first arrived, I'd only seen it, you know, on a screen in small form. But I think that's also what's fortunate about this medium is that you're able to you know, make the projection larger.
Yeah, but then Joseph too, because exactly, this would normally be seen as a filmmaker. Normally I would be in film festivals, right? So it would be this size, but there's like, you're in the dark, and there's like all these seats, and there's a bit of a distance, right? This, because Nicole, like when I walked in the first time and you said, oh, I decided to do the whole wall. Like at that moment, I swear to God, like, I think my hearing stopped. You know what I mean? Like it was just, I can't even, like I was so drawn in. But I think, I mean, size matters, right? So like, and there is, and just the whole setup, everything works into it, but yeah.
It's a good picture, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for sharing your work. I'm doing a lot of research right now actually on water and nuclearity and uranium mining, and yeah, I feel like there's a lot of, I mean, just in terms of nuclear power plants are, like all of them are situated on the water, which is really detrimental to bodies of water. And I guess what I think like is really interesting about the idea of like the nearness of distance is the fact that Nancy, you've like chosen this sacred site, this body of water and these falls that are highly commodified and are, in terms of like the Southern colonial gaze, have commodified this thing, which creates distance. Like we don't consider the relation we have. And I think that, Stephen, like the way that you're actually using video like as evidence of these, like these sites of mining and extraction and military testing that is out of sight. So it's like this thing that these colonial violences that can happen that are like out of sight on traditional lands and are in places that are like the desert that are considered like wastelands. But then you also have this site which is like one of the most visited tourist attractions, and that also being like a violence that creates that distance.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I think that there is links there that are really interesting to see together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, and the fact that we didn't even, when you taught this in school is insulting. Do you know what I mean? Like it's really like when you really start to go through it, and then like exactly, all of us, I think everyone in this room has been to Niagara Falls. You know? No? Okay, cool. You will. You will. Just look at the water and ignore everything else. Do you know what I mean? And like it'll be a lot better. But yeah, no, thank you. That was actually quite insightful.
Get another person over here, yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned using a phone camera, and these days there's an increasing use of phone camera in artwork, but then it doesn't capture as much details as the camera with the larger, more powerful lenses. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my editor actually did some magic. You know, there's ways you can go about it actually to increase like just the saturation of colors and details, etc. But there was a few years ago, I forgot what the person's name, rather, from Scotland. She won like it's the Turner Prize in the UK. Whole film was shot with an iPhone, and I thought she could do it, and I could do it. So then this was the first time I'd ever tried this in my life, and it's good. The one problem with an iPhone is that it averages out color, like light rather. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you want something darker, but if you have like a proper editing system afterwards, you can tweak things, you can play with it to sort of match. But yeah, try that.
I want to add to that another point, maybe that there's an obsession with having a really tight, clean image and being able to see all this detail. And then we have the ability now with the camera systems. And I think I'm less worried about it in terms of like that kind of experience when you see my image. That I'm more concerned with, like that I'm getting the essence or the feeling of this place, whether it's in color or the mood of the camera movement, or like for the aerial work, very specific to like a type of mapping or surveillance that we have on the land. And that kind of plays into the aerial footage that I shot. But yeah, good question. You can get obsessed with like.
But hang on, maybe we're going to take it another angle, because I went to film school and I primarily shot film, like up until a few years ago, only film. And like digital is new to me, and it's so clean and so sharp, okay? So I have to dirty the image, as they say. Like that's the expression, do you know what I mean? To take it down, I don't want it to be so heightened. But really, like, there's a lot that you can actually do. It's actually quite user-friendly and accessible. But yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, yeah, sometimes it's too bright for me, and I just want to take it down, but it's okay.
One more question, or
Sure.
like stop down there?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask, there's a part where Rick Hill is speaking, and he talks about cosmic drama, and like these sort of massive, the creator and his brother are fighting, and there's sort of these like massive impacts on the land. And I think we also get this sense of cosmic drama in Steve's work too, like these beautiful, over-refined shots of land that just sort of impactful. But there's also sections of your film, Stephen, where you're in this house with a couple of people doing these sort of very like banal, mundane, like the washing the dishes and hanging out. So I was thinking about these contrasts of like cosmic drama and very like day-to-day ways of living. I was wondering if you could maybe speak about that, Stephen, or maybe just a little more about that section of the film that happens in this sort of very domestic, intimate sphere.
For me, it was about humanizing the moments and the small moments, the everyday moments. That there's a reflection that Freddie Johnson is the voice you hear, and he works with Indigenous youth at the Phoenix Indian Center. and he's also writes poems, on the side, or writes little memories and stories. So he was recounting a story of growing up and the smell of coffee and grandmother and all these things, these little moments. And I thought, as we're coming from this sacred space and we're flying, and the viewer is being taken through this landscape, there's a moment. The film is broken up in chapters, and they're almost like verses of a song. And I took those chapters, those ideas from an Navajo song. It's a mountain chant, a mountain song way, and I tried to construct something that felt like it could be seen as a kind of a progression or a journey, and part of that just peeks into the kind of the life of a family and the memory that we have sometimes at home and people are. And so it was just to really kind of humanize the experience and then bring it back to the land. So there's maybe creating that relationship, because I think for many, most Indigenous people that I know, like everything comes from the earth, right? Everything is connected to the earth or sky, and it's always making that a touchstone or making that a point of connection, but also reminding us of just the little things in our life. And I like those poetic moments when they're not too overdone. I felt that one it had a nice place or space in that film.
That's great. I want to just thank everyone for coming out and for being here, and let's have a little round of applause. Thank you. It's an amazing conversation.
Was it a?
Yes, it was so good.
Yes, I hope so.
Lots more insight into the work. Sorry. Before we all move away, I also just wanted to mention that we have two other exhibitions opening tonight. So Sarah Mecca Abdurrahman, whose work is up in the vitrines right now. And we also have this amazing little reading room that the folks from the Fine Arts Reading Rooms is the student library here at 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵, and they have selected a set of books and magazines and posters from their collection in response to the works here. So it was very much a curated choice to kind of pick up on some of the themes that they saw in the work, and it's everything from sort of water to object-oriented ontologies to Indigenous writings about the land. So they've done a fabulous selection there, and I invite you to check that out. And just wanted to say thanks too to 𝘋𝘪𝘴𝘵 𝘕𝘦𝘢𝘯𝘬, Elena Martin, 𝘋𝑺RC, Ali Turgeon, and Indialan Afshar Ruffner, who's Indialan's here. Is anyone else from the far still here? Or just waving my okay, so out of the room, you can talk to Indialan. And with that, I think we can wrap it up.
Thank you.
Okay.